Okay, I will call this meeting to order. This is the FY 2027 budget working session. This is an informal meeting, so we encourage participation throughout the meeting by our residents. I see Jean is still trying to connect to audio, so hopefully she's able to join. And if anyone else knows of anyone trying to join, here comes Alexa,
Here it
another
comes.
council member. This is a public meeting, so it's fine that we have a quorum of the council members here. And I have posted notices for this so everyone knows this is happening tonight. And I just have a couple things, and maybe we can make some introductions and get any comments that we have from anybody off the bat so we know where we're going tonight. This is just a discussion. Like I said, the actual budget will be introduced along with the tax rate resolution and the budget itself at the March 19th council meeting. So the council will introduce that. They will wait more than 30 days until May 14th, which is called our annual meeting in our charter. So the annual meeting is on May 14th. That is where there will be a budget um, adoption vote eventually, but there will be a budget hearing first where residents will be able to participate in discussions if there's anything at that point. This is just a working session that Jeff and I and Arthur have been doing for since I've been here. I'm sure it has existed in different forms at different times throughout the years. So it's very helpful for me as I kind of think through the budget and I go line by line anyways. So we decided a couple years ago we might as well do this in public. We're 100% transparent here. So we go line by line. And again, May 14th is the date we want to be thinking about. And then I want to make intros, and I think we all know each other. So what I'm really interested in is if any of you here tonight have specific budget line items that you're interested in or specific new programs that you're interested in promoting. It's good for me to be aware of those things off the bat in the beginning of the budget cycle so that I can foresee what's coming and prep my council members for that.
Okay, we had Jeff two ways, and now we have him one way. Okay.
Marty has your hand raised. Go ahead.
Hi, number one, thank you for doing this session. I wish we had 30 people here. And I think it's really important for villagers to know what our finances look like. Couple questions. One is generally, I think that many people have been surprised to learn that we have $7.5 million in total resources. Um, and I don't see that reflected here in this budget summary. And Arthur, thank you for sending the balance sheet over to the election committee. When we were looking at that, I guess 2 months ago, it was really helpful. So that's one thing, is to sort of make it clear what the big picture looks like. Last year's election committee and this year's too also thought it would be very helpful to have a budget summary flyer
Mhm.
that we could help to use to publicize the importance of candidates running and maybe encourage people to step up. So that's still kind of a pending item to do. And the other thing is I wanted to follow up on something that I'm not sure what I think of, but we had a resident recommend solar projects that the village would somehow,
Right.
and I know that was on the survey last fall, and I'm wondering if there's been any research on what those projects might look like and what it might cost. Again, I'm not necessarily advocating for that. I'm just wondering about follow-up because I have no idea at all of what the scope of that would be, what the size of, subsidizing solar roof panels or whatever would be
Mhm.
for the village or what that might look like. So that
Mhm.
is sort of on my tickler list of things to ask about. And again, thank you. I'll probably have other questions later in the session.
Thank you, Marty. I'm taking notes here, so I'm not ignoring or not answering you right now. I am
No, that's
simply taking
fine.
notes, and
I
we are going
appreciate it.
to, I think I'm going to get to each of those points that you made, the big picture, the flyer idea with some pie charts, as well as the solar panel I'm going to mention later once we get into the spreadsheet.
And when we get to elections, I would like to say a few things about the election expenses.
Sure. Yep.
So
Yeah,
down the
absolutely.
road. Thank you.
Okay, elections as well. All right. Jean, did you have a comment? If you
Okay, I'm
unmute or
sorry.
something.
It took me a minute to unmute myself. Hi, thanks. Thanks, Michael, for this and everybody else. Just, I thought tonight, from what I understood here, we were going to focus on what you highlighted in yellow, right? Pretty much. That was where you want to go with this?
Yeah, I
Okay.
have prepared comments for the things in yellow,
Okay.
so I
Okay.
will mention on those. If you
Okay,
are
good.
particularly interested in a certain thing, though, I would like to know that up front. That way I can,
Okay. No, I want to
adjust those
start to
comments.
hear what I want to see what you have to say first before I have any comments. The only thing that I think might be helpful the next time we do this is to have a column that's FY25 and then 26 and compare the past
Mm,
with the present rather than FY26 year to date and the budget, or at least like compare the costs where we are. Like if you don't mind, permit fees under the FY26 year to date column, it says $9,331 and change. And the
hmm
budget was $15,000 for that category. The difference is 5,000, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
I guess the question is, so what?
hmm
How do you use those numbers to determine what you are going to recommend or what the council thinks is necessary, what you think is necessary as manager in the following year? I would think looking at the past, 25 to 26, what was the change? 26 to what you're proposing for 27, what's the change? Just, I don't know, just having more data. I
Right.
know it's a tight page, but you're highlighting just a few of the categories.
hmm
And, like the difference between the year to date FY26 cable franchise fees and what was budgeted is almost $5,000. We're in March, so we have April, May, and June. We have 3 more months, and then you could do prorated, blah, blah. But I don't know, just thinking about
Okay.
whether a different layout would generate more questions about accurate budgeting and reasonable budgeting. Just a thought. Okay, I'll stop
Good.
talking.
Good
That
point.
no, that's really great content,
Okay.
Gene. You always point us to the history, so I really appreciate that.
Okay.
And I do have more data, and I know Arthur has a trove of data as well. So there were some choices made for what's included on this sheet, but trust me, there's much more
Mhm.
that I can share later, and I will talk about what I've highlighted and explain why I included what I did. Um, so great. Jump back in later too.
Uh,
Elizabeth.
Unmute. There you
Okay.
go.
Hi, everybody. Good evening.
Hi.
Okay, so I don't see that our chair from the Stormwater Task Force is here with us tonight, nor Yasmina. I think Yasmina has spoken to a couple of council members and to you, Michael,
Yes.
about, since we're a little bit late getting our final report out and reviewed and all of that, and missing this important deadline, we wanted to make sure that it didn't get forgotten, that there were very concrete and specific needs that are coming out of it that we're putting into a little action plan to complement the final report. So that will be sent to the council at the time it's presented on in your April council meeting. But
Mhm.
the idea is to get it into the budget, so it doesn't get forgotten. And I understand, I mean, the grand majority of the recommendations in the report fall under, you've explained to me, Michael, under capital expenditures, those that involve gray infrastructure, tubes and pipes and all that kind of stuff, improvements and in those. And the other part of it is this sort of the soft side, which is what we call the community education, kind of the green infrastructure. So I just wanted to, I had looked through this quickly and I didn't see anything. I thought everything looked very generic and I couldn't figure out where you might have put that in until I looked on the second page now, and I see you've got something that says stormwater education and programs. So I
Right.
assume that's the slot for part of it. But there were still things like um, uh, permit review, for example, which isn't capital and it's ongoing, right? With
Correct.
by
Correct.
somebody with stormwater expertise. So that could be most likely a law, either a stormwater engineer and or a lawyer. But to make sure that it's in compliance with whatever new
Elizabeth,
regulations.
let me jump in there and respond to this first part, and then I want to hear what you have left
Okay.
to say. Um, Unlike the solar program, which I'll get to in Marty's question about that, where there hasn't been much follow-up, there has been a ton of follow-up, and I've heard lots of, ideas and projects coming forth soon. So I did include that line item for the council to consider related to the second piece there, which is the education and the programs, maybe a rebate
Uh-huh.
program for rain barrels,
Yeah.
for rain gardens, those types of programs idea. That's why I included that line item there. I took that dollar amount from Yasmina's research related
Mm-hmm.
to Chevy Chase View that already has a similar program that they
Yeah.
budget $50,000 for. And then there was a couple other little workshops that Yasmina had budgeted out for a couple $1,000s. So I just rounded that up to $55,000. So that is the education and program, friendly programs piece that you mentioned. The
Yeah.
code piece I'm going to talk about, we have a budget line item for our building code enforcement, and
Yes.
I confirmed this week that we have enough money in there for to potentially hire somebody to do a holistic review of our building code, as well as look at this issue that the stormwater task force is about to recommend to the council, which is to
Mhm.
look at adopting a stormwater management code. So we have money in that budget line item already for that specific piece of this. Then, as you mentioned, the the projects, if we're going to dig up a street and put in a new storm drain, the project budget, those would come out of the capital projects. That's the $1.5 million that I'm recommending the council keep in the budget, even after the sidewalk project is done. I'm saying keep it in there because there's going to be the next project is coming.
Okay. But there's that, in addition to the ordinance drafting, there was permit review. And that would be ongoing as applications are made for building, for construction projects. Somebody has to review them to make sure they're in conformance with the compliance with the stormwater new provisions that, to be drafted, that sort of thing. And other jurisdictions seem to have engineers that do that, but
Hmm.
it could also be an attorney that does it, that. So I just wanted to make sure that second one didn't get,
Right.
that it had been
That part is
considered.
a little tricky, and maybe we'll deserve some council discussion
Okay.
because the council hasn't actually passed anything yet. So I don't want to
Right,
budget
right. No, this,
something
I,
for the
I understand. It's
predicting what
just,
the council is going to pass or not
abs-
pass.
no, absolutely. I
But
understand that. It's
but
just
it would
not,
be in that line item for, whether it's code review or whether it's stormwater review, it's the
yeah.
same budget line item.
Okay,
So
wonderful.
we'll get into that.
Great. Thank
Elizabeth,
you
for
very much.
future, that would be under budget item 5220, permitting and code enforcement. And
All
you'll
right.
see that's currently programmed at 86,000, the same as last year.
5520.
Yeah,
And
look
and
down on
we're
the
going to talk
left.
about it in order here in a second. So
Okay, yeah, we'll get to
Okay.
it.
yeah.
Mine 5520 says community events, other, but maybe
Uh,
you have a newer version? This was
no,
yesterday. Okay.
budget line item, permitting and code enforcement is kind of in the middle, after accounting and
5220.
before legal.
Okay, I'm just looking off the sheet that Michael's
Oh, okay.
It's five
directed the
two.
traffic to yesterday
Elizabeth,
on the,
it's 5220, not 5520. It's
oh, great.
5220.
Thank you. That's it. I see it now.
Okay.
Okay, got it.
Yep,
All
and,
right.
and I'll explain the year-to-date expense in that column B in a second. So we'll get there.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you very
Jeff,
much.
Actually, Yasmina, was there anything else or sorry, Elizabeth, was there
No,
anything else that you wanted to talk about besides stormwater?
no, that's it for today.
Okay, yeah, that's definitely on our radar. We're going to talk about it, so that's great.
Thank you.
Jeff.
Yeah, thanks. Well, I'll make this short, but first I want to thank all the residents and everyone. This has been a great robust sort of jump in at the start, but I just wanted to kind of maybe take a moment. I know Arthur probably will too, just really as an opening, thanking everyone and to go through the run of the show because I know there's going to be a lot of detail that you'll share about the budget overall. We'll have discussion council members and open it up. And we try and keep these discussions in a way that it's very interactive, just like this. But just want to also mention, and I think it's important to recognize the significant amount of work that Michael has put in to prepare for tonight. And he really does make it very easy for us to walk in. And I do want to just mention Gene's point, and I think it's a really good one. And I know that when we get to that discussion during the monthly meetings, Michael has, and that's on the record, has always put those columns that you're asking about, right? The before and after. But, again, for this session, in hindsight, but just appreciating that Michael does prepare us extremely well, and will continue to do so. And maybe if it's Arthur, you were going to say this, or Michael, maybe just quickly go through the run of show, what to expect, and then how we can continue this really great dialogue. Thanks.
Yeah,
Michael,
good point, Jeff. I
we're
should
just
have
going
done
to go. Michael, why don't you say the order of procedure here?
Yeah, so we just got through my prologue at the beginning, just saying that this is just a discussion and that the future dates, intros, which we just did, resident comments up front, we just did. I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to explain the I'm going to explain my highlighting and why I included what I included in the different columns here, and go slow, make sure everyone understands the spreadsheet that's in front of us. And then we're going to go line by line, starting with revenue. And the highlighted versions will be the things that I'm focusing on, as well as anything else that you all would like to focus on, because you're here. So we're going to focus on what you want to focus on. That's the reward you get for coming to this meeting.
And
And then at the
Michael and
end,
Arthur, just real quickly, just point of order. I know in the last several years, we've kept this very conversational, meaning that we don't shut out the discussion with residents and you're just sitting there waiting for us to be done with the presentation. So I just want to also defer, but I think we welcome those comments along the way as we're going through it. And this is a very interactive dialogue, and we really encourage that sort of discussion. Over.
absolutely. Yes, that's absolutely what I want out of this meeting. So please interrupt me whenever someone has a thought. I appreciate
With a smile, though, with a
it.
smile.
Yeah, yeah. And at the end, we're going to talk about next steps, which is I'm going to be drafting a transmittal letter this year that'll include the flyer that Marty was referring to about, a summary of the budget, explaining the budget, a little cover letter that then will be a transmittal letter of me sending this draft budget to the council saying, here's the draft budget I think you all should introduce at your council meeting. And then they can take it from there. Along with that, I will be doing a new thing as well this year, and this comes out of my conference. I attended a couple sessions on how to do municipal budgets for small municipalities, and the recommendation was to have a transmittal letter because that's my opportunity to say what I want in the budget, and then the budget narrative as well. So I think that we'll get to some of Marty's questions about the flyer, but also about the big picture of where we come from, and Gene's point about the history. Where have we come from? How much has the budget increased year over year? Those types of questions. I'm looking back more than just one year, but maybe even a chance to look at some historical data. So we will do that. With that, if there's no more questions, I will share my screen. The big hurrah. Can everyone see my screen?
Yep, it's there.
Okay, so I'm starting at the bottom of this spreadsheet, and this is the spreadsheet, and this is live. So any edits I make during this meeting will be officially in the budget, draft budget that I'm going to recommend to the council. So to start with, the highlighted sections are what we're really going to focus on. That just means I know there's been a change or there needs to be a discussion about a specific budget line item. The red text means that we can delete that line. It's no longer relevant for our purposes, or it's been merged with another line or something. And the green text indicates that this is a new program or new budget line that we are going to be discussing at the council level for this year. That's where, if we do decide to include a solar program, for example, or some rainwater programming, this is where we would actually be creating a new line in the budget. So that's an option in front of the council. And with that, I will go to the top of this budget, and we're going to start with revenues, which is really easy. So here we have the budget category in the first column, A. We have FY26 year to date is what that stands for, YTD. And year to date for this purpose, because we haven't actually closed out February, is actually through January 31st of 2026. So it's July 1 through 2026, just over half the year is here. So, and it doesn't always work. For example, snow plowing is already done. We've already spent all our money on snow plowing, so that might be here, or it might be a full budget category. But whatever was through January at least. But other programs, it's every single month. Waste management, every single month, it's a bill. So it's you can see that we're equal to our budget line item.
No, I understand.
I'm gonna mute Elizabeth. Okay. The second or the third column here is this last year's budget. That's the budget we're currently in and working towards meeting as closely as we can. And we might have to do a budget adjustment if we do go over on any of those spending categories. And then this is the draft budget, column D, that we're working on today. Jeff, a couple years ago, had me add these columns, which are helpful and I don't think are on your handout, which are the percent change. You'll see that as we make changes. You'll see for revenue, we haven't changed a single line item yet. So we're anticipating the exactly same amount of revenue next year as we did this year. So there's no change. And then the percent of the total budget. So you can see that income tax makes up 65% of our total revenue, which again is anticipated to be at $1.1 million. Does everyone understand the layout of the budget? And Jeff, I see your hand raised.
Very quick point. I'm just turning it over to Gene. Gene, I'm sorry, maybe I misread your interpretation. Are you saying that you wanted the fiscal year 25 as a further benchmark? Was that your
Yeah,
comment, or is what you're seeing here what you were hoping to see? Over.
yeah.
No, it doesn't have to be 25. 25 might help, but maybe it's too early in the process. My understanding is right now we're talking about where we are right now and what's going to look in the future. Maybe we need to go back a little bit, maybe. But I don't think that's so. This helps. This is different than what I found online. So this is more helpful. It's the change, percent change was, and dollar change. That was what I had suggested. What I find somewhat troublesome some is that there are ways to calculate changes in things like income tax, highway revenues. Are you feeling at this point in the process, it's early enough that the safest position is just to presume the revenues are going to stay the same? When I forget when the reports start coming from the state about anticipated increase in income tax revenues and property tax revenues and stuff. I think we tend to be very conservative if we simply maintain the current year's revenue anticipated. Have you done any research about what might be recommended? What's coming from the state and the county?
Great question. You're one step ahead of me. Let's jump
Oh, sorry,
into
sorry, I
let's jump into
apologize.
revenues, and I can a
Okay,
perfect
fine.
example here is the county revenue sharing. You'll see this year that we're in right now, we budgeted $58,380, and guess how much
Right,
we've received year to date?
nothing.
Exactly that amount. That's
Oh, okay.
because last year I got a letter from the county telling me how much they were going to give us, and so I
Right,
was able to just plug it in here in time, and therefore I was able to budget exactly. It's to the cent. Um, I haven't received that letter yet for this year, or this next year. So at this point, I'm just holding steady. That's kind of our default, is just to roll forward the numbers unless we learn otherwise. Um, I have done some, actually Arthur can speak to this related to the one that's the franchise fees that's highlighted here. We Arthur has kept, historical data for going back years about not only what we've budgeted, but also how much we have made in like franchise fees every single year going back since he's been on the council. So, Arthur, do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, what you have there, it's about, the last 5 years has been about 10, $11,000, just what you show. Yeah.
Right. So we're right. I mean, we've got this really dialed in now. I mean, we've been doing this, every single year since as long as the village has been, active. So, I mean, we really have it doesn't change much. A lot of these are very, very close every single year. It's about $10,000 we receive in franchise fees. That's the number. Um,
Michael, I guess I'm not talking about $10,000 in franchise fees. In a lot of ways, that's a very set number. I'm
right.
talking about the big bucks, the
Yeah.
income tax, the property tax. That's what I'm talking about.
Well,
Is
right.
what
Gee,
are
we have no idea what the income tax is going to be.
Well,
And
but no, there are some measures about what changes the county expects and what are they changing the proportion. But
uh,
if you already explore that, and that's fine.
yeah,
I just wanted to know if you've explored it at all. It
yeah,
may be too soon.
Hmm.
Just wanted to know. Thank you.
yeah.
Yeah, I think the last several years, and Arthur can jump into this too, for interest, we have gone over this $200,000 the last several years. So we keep budgeting under. And again, municipalities we're not for profit here. We're not trying to make a profit at the end of the year. We're just trying to make money and spend money. And if we can put a little in the way in the bank, that's great. So, um, this $1.1 million budget on revenues is super conservative. I think we will make closer
Okay.
to 1.3, and we have the last 2 years. The but I'm keeping it super conservative, and I'm also, keeping expenses down as much as I can, but I'm overestimating expenses. So we're underestimating revenue and overestimating expenses, and then at the end of the day, everyone's happy because we put aside a couple $100,000 into the bank every year. Jeff, yes.
Great. I'll make this really short. Thanks, Gene. I think it's a really important point in terms of just modeling out what we expect the income, of course, expenses, but income and what are some of the metrics or modeling that we could use. And I'm not going to put Arthur on the spot, but I will share a couple things. One, as we do get our receipts that come in typically monthly or so, Arthur will do a spot check for us in real time as we're doing the monthly treasurer report, just indicating pretty much, a variance of is this on track? Is it below? Is it above? And then I would say what we can do is just, doubly verify using some of that information that when we do get to the first council meeting where we present this, we could take a look because we have heard, for example, that the county and state expects that there may be a downturn in economic growth. So I think, when we say conservative, sometimes we've been conservative in terms of a straight line um, forecast, but I think you bring up a good question of if we anticipate a downturn, is a straight line forecast the appropriate thing, and or do we look at perhaps another variable or at least the sensitivity, that what happens if it drops by X%. So I'll pause there. I don't want to belabor it, but I think it's a very good point that you bring up, and maybe turn it over to Arthur if he has anything else he'd like to add on
No,
that. Go.
nothing. You done. You said it.
I would like to say, yeah, Regine is right that we should be focusing on these two big ticket items because again, 65% of our money comes from the income tax. So maybe we can do a little more modeling. We haven't yet for this year specifically, but as Jeff just said, we do keep track every single month about where we're on pace with previous years. Arthur will tell us, hey, we're a little bit ahead or we're a little bit behind of last year. So that we kind of have a sense of that, but we haven't done like a full research project on it.
Yeah.
And interest, I think we can probably jump into what the interest rates are we're getting. Most of our all of our money really, besides whatever's in our checking account, is in the MLPI MIP account, which is, backed by the state and has pretty good interest rates. So we're pretty happy with that. So we could look at how much money we have in that bank account and, what we anticipate as far as our interest this year off of that. So that would be pretty easy to figure out what exactly that's going to be, though interest rates can change. Those do adjust over the year. Um, Marty, did you have your hand up?
Yes, thank you. That was exactly where I was going next with a question about the interest payments. Two questions, actually. One was, is all of our funding now in that state fund for municipalities? We don't have any separate um, CDs or other bank accounts hanging out there anywhere from olden days.
That's correct. Yeah, we got rid of our last CD. We found that the bank account as it was getting the same interest rate that the CD was. So, and the CD has the disadvantage of it's a heavy administrative burden because every year you have to renew it and you only can have $250,000 in it, and it's tied up. It's not accessible if you did need it or want it.
Mhm.
Um,
And
so
my
it's
other,
it's much easier to just have it in one bank account.
I agree completely.
Yeah.
And since we're getting decent interest from that account, I think that's a wise decision. My other question was, as we spend down for capital projects like the sidewalk and potentially stormwater major expenditures, um, we're going to have less interest coming in the future because our capital base will decline from 7.6 on a balance sheet, as we spend those reserves down. So
Hmm.
we will be seeing a declining amount of interest probably in the future because the base.
Well,
What do you think?
not by much. I mean, since I've been here, we have made more money than we have spent every single year. So maybe this would be the first year if I do pull off a sidewalk project in the next 3 months, that we would actually spend more than we made. But every year it seems like we make more than we spend, and that's
And
kind
the other thing, what's driving interest is the interest rate,
Mm-hmm.
times the balance. But the
Right.
interest rate has been the thing that has really varied. Uh, Remember, Steve
right.
Schmall used to say, "Why are we only getting $30 in interest when the interest rate was 0.001?"
Right. And now we're close to what, 6%, Michael?
A little less. Yeah.
Less, I think five. Yeah, five.
5%?
Yeah.
Okay.
Again, I am making a note here for myself to research both the income tax levels and as well as the interest rates that we anticipate for the next year, because that these numbers could adjust to be a little more accurate. But again, we want to remain conservative, and I believe
And
both these numbers are, conservative. We're
exactly.
gonna top
Exactly.
them this year. I mean, you can see how much we have made through January, almost
Exactly. It's
150,000.
terrific. Yeah. Yeah.
So.
My other question is the security of that count. I assume it's fully insured. There's absolutely no possibility of it
Yeah.
in any way becoming
Actually,
fragile, right?
the state law requires municipalities to keep their money in fully insured deposits.
That's
That's
the
right.
reassurance I wanted. Thank you. I'm done.
Yeah, and if we put it in another bank account, that's where it's $250,000 is the limit for other accounts. For this account, it doesn't have any limits. It's backed by the state. Jeff.
Very quick, I just wanted to second or third that point on the interest rate piece, in that we know that the last number of years, the interest rates have actually been higher than we've had historically. So again, it may behoove us to just think about that and whether or not our interest income again will maintain a flat line, dip, that sort of thing. I think it makes sense. And these were the points I was going to highlight a little bit later, but I do think Gene's already mentioned and Marty, I think those areas of interest rate could lower, and then the overall, if there is a downturn, we've been pretty inelastic to economic, swings. So I don't necessarily say historically we would see a big fluctuation in our income, but it is possible and we should model it. Over.
Yeah, I agree. We should model it. And as Arthur always says, it lags behind too. Like if the economy, tanks right now, we wouldn't notice it until next year. So, that we have a little bit of a lead time. So the economy hasn't tanked yet, so we're probably good through the end of, December. It wouldn't be until spring that we would see that
Even
number
then,
start to
Michael,
decline.
because we're still drawing on that income tax is from 2024, just beginning 2025.
Right.
And so if something happens in 2026, we're not going to see it in these items for another 18 months, 2 years.
Right. So it'd be next year's budget. So if the economy had crashed in November, then we would be adjusting this number accordingly. But because it hasn't, it still seems to be just riding along kind of level,
Yeah.
or sporadically moving up and down. Um, we're just kind of keeping it still until we have additional information, basically. So that's all I have for revenue. I did highlight the franchise fees, and actually, I think I want to talk about that when we talk about expenses because we have gotten a request from Montgomery Municipal Cable to to reallocate these funds back to them. They're a cable company that serves us. They produce all our YouTube videos, for example. They come to our events and film our events. They're a great little nonprofit that was started out of the municipalities, and they are having a hard time with their funding sources and are hoping to, this was the original intent for these franchise fees to go to local TV cables stuff. So their funding model is based on this, and they're not getting any of this money right now. It's just going in our coffers. So there's a request in front of the council to consider reallocating that, and I'm going to talk about that again in the finances or in the expenses. Is there any other comments or thoughts on the revenues here of 1.1 million?
Okay, moving on.
Okay. Now we get to the fun stuff. Expenditures. I'm going to keep everything the same. Office expenses, community engagement item. That's like the magnets we bought, or we're thinking of buying hats this year or something. Um, Office furniture and equipment. We keep that pretty low. Last year I bought a new computer that might have gone into there. Um, there's our insurance fee. We got a refund for our insurance because we paid we had been paying a hefty insurance price for having two part-time police officers in previous years. When we got rid of those police officers, they refunded us a huge amount of our insurance bill. So this might not be accurate, but it will be before the end of the year and for the auditors look at this. Printing and mailing, we've only spent $1,000 of this money so far, but I am still trying to get the updated directory out the door, and that's a big chunk of that. So we raised this last year. This is where Gene's point, if we had included previous year's budgets, this would show you that we had raised this last year. So that's why I'm recommending no raise to that category this year. Dues and subscriptions, same thing, keeping it the same. I think we had raised it in a previous year. That should cover my conferences and some trainings and things that we're doing. This year, I'm instead of doing MML's summer conference, I did Leadership Montgomery, which is a whole year-long training program. So that's been really helpful. And then this also pays for my big annual conference as well as the state city and county manager association conference that I'm going to in the spring. This year it's in Montgomery County, so that'll be easy. Office lease, we are suggesting bumping it up, just rounding it up really. We always tried, we should know exactly what the office lease is because it's the same thing every year, but we keep going over because the Shirazi, the owner of the office as well as Brookville Market and all of those buildings there, he passes on the property taxes to us. And so we end up paying property taxes and fees and utility charges and things for that property. So that bill comes through. Yes, Elizabeth.
Right. On that subject, I wanted to ask um, property lease that go back to a subject. I'm not sure which. It was some months ago when we were talking about our meetings and the awkwardness of not having enough space in the current office to accommodate people in person, and also the awkwardness of the system not working real well to have it both, in generally the transmission is better by Zoom than it is in person. But if you had obviously a primarily in-person meeting, that would be a different issue. So my question is this something that could be put on the opportunity pile to think about an alternative venue,
Yeah.
either renting it or actually leasing, that would accommodate, you know, a larger group for council meetings or particular events. And just to investigate what the options are, what's available, how much does it cost. It just seems to me that the time would be right to do that.
Elizabeth, I don't understand what you mean. We can accommodate quite a not large number of people for an in-person meeting.
Actually, I do think there's some issues with the village office, though I love it, and I love that I have big windows and get to work there every day. I think the ADA accessibility is a natural problem.
That's a separate issue,
Yeah,
right?
that's a really big issue.
And as far as the sound audio thing, it's interesting because it's really easy to run an all online meeting, right? This meeting, the sound quality is great. I have a nice
Right.
camera here, everything's fine. And it's really easy to run an all in-person meeting when you get cut cake together and celebrate each other's birthdays, and it's a little more personal. What's really hard, and I've learned through this job, is really, really hard, is to do both at the same time. So, and both have their values, but doing both at the same time means I'm running two meetings at the same time at a lower quality. I've looked into how to improve those, and we have made improvements. The sound quality has been way better. We're getting way less complaints about the sound quality. And there might be additional ways to improve, our council meetings so that the online and the in-person experience are better than they currently are. And that would probably not be in the office lease, though I'm intrigued by the idea of a town hall or sort of different space where we could put this in. I think that would actually probably go in like office furniture. If I was going to hire an outside expert to come in and set up a whole sound audio system with multiple angles of cameras and microphones that are connected all over the room, that's probably the line item I would be looking at. You'll see that we don't spend anywhere near our $15,000 in office expenses or our $3,000 in or sorry, $2,000 in office furniture and equipment.
There
So
is one
there's some
other
options there.
issue, Elizabeth, that we've mentioned in the past, that is that we might be able to buy a property in the village and use the existing structure as office and the grounds as park, and something that Jeff has been promoting. I've mentioned on a number of occasions in the past. Even one of my treasurer's reports a few years ago looked at the expenses of buying a local property that might come available. So it's something that we might even put into the capital budget as a target of opportunity if and when something might arise. But I see
Right.
Marty's hand was up.
Well, Jeff, did you have a
Jeff.
response to that or on this point?
Yeah, I'll just say that I think we were going to, at the next council meeting, we were going to share some of our research we've had with neighboring uh, municipalities, including Garrett Park and within Chevy Chase, about some of the deals and the structures that they have specific to land and development of parks, which includes gifts. And so I think that there are some very realistic, proven models where I think we're hopeful that, once we have those researched and we publish them at large to the VMA community, I would be hopeful that we'll have some very exciting possibilities. But let's take that up at another time. We're not going to be budgeting for it per se, but we'll talk more about it at the next open meeting. And I think there'll be a lot of interest in what we found out. Over.
And Marty
Yeah,
had her hand up.
and
Yes.
thanks for your work on that, Jeff. That's great. I'm looking forward to that discussion at the next council meeting. Marty?
Yeah, this is exactly my question, following up on what you guys just said. That little house, not so little, on Taylor Street, right around the corner, the house adjacent to the La Ferme parking lot fence, is still for sale, and I think the price on that has been reduced a couple times because it hasn't sold. It's been on the market for at least 6 months. And I don't know how much it would cost now, but is that something that is an option? It's certainly ideally located in terms of central, accessibility in the village. It's more handicapped accessible than the office is, said as someone who has trouble with the stairs sometimes. And I think that it's a real possibility if you want to look into that to see how much it would cost, and possibly is it usable space. It is certainly convenient, and again, ADA accessibility matters. So I would hope that at some point, Michael, you or somebody will look into that. That house is available right now, and boy, is it well located.
Well, I
Yeah,
think we should not reject it out of hand.
right. Yeah. And I will say that I think the processes that Jeff is looking into would include, those types of options. I will say, I will just caution everyone that things do not move fast. Purchasing a piece of property or something like that would require a significant amount of community input and strategic planning that we haven't done. So I think we're just starting right now to do the legwork, and I am hopeful that something like that can come to be. But for now, in this year's budget, I don't think we should be, but setting aside $2 million to purchase a house. Um,
I hope it wouldn't be that much. The other question I had
right.
about land purchases was, you've done some nice work on the easements along Brookville Road to get the
Mm,
sidewalk work started. But a couple of residents, Susan Kahn among others, have repeatedly suggested easements, particularly, that go sort of north-south through the village to avoid people having to use Brookville Road, the cut-throughs like the one we used to have for, God, generations at the corner of Summit and Taylor that let the whole north side cut through to the park, which has only been closed in recent years. And so, is there any planning process in place for the possible purchase of interior easements, like one at the corner of Summit and Taylor to the park? Do we have any notion of how much that might cost? Have we looked into that?
Uh, no, as far as I know, no. I would urge any interested resident to take the lead in doing that.
Well, I'm interested, but I'm running an election, so I don't have a whole lot of spare
Yeah.
time.
I am also super interested in this idea. I do think that would probably, if there needed to be a purchasing of an easement of some kind, or if one of the neighbors agreed to allow for us to, build some sort of walkway cutting through or something like that, and that we could, put down as an official, sidewalk or bike path or something, that would probably come out of the capital projects budget. So I don't think that's a budget concern as much as it is a you know public
Yeah.
participation, and I'm sure the neighbors would have feelings about us doing something like that. So I do think it's a good idea, and someone should research it. But no, we haven't budgeted for it yet. And if we did, it would probably just come out of capital projects.
Yeah.
So I like the discussion, but this probably isn't the place for it. Okay, I'm going to keep
Okay.
moving here.
Moving
And
on
Arthur,
down.
you have something? Okay.
No, I'm not. I'm done.
We're good on telephone. This includes, I have an online cell phone number that some people can call me on off hours. And it helps me work with like our contractors and stuff. But otherwise, at some point, I think the village should actually purchase the manager a second cell phone for one reason, and I've mentioned this, the amount of software that we have that requires requires you to have a phone number in order to log in,
Right.
just to process payroll or to process the bills, you have to get text messages. And if something happened to me in my personal cell phone, um, th- the next person that came into the office would have a hard time logging into all those accounts.
Yeah,
So
I
I
think
got my phone
we
number.
should do it. Why should we not? We should have that in the budget right now.
I can research how much that would actually cost. I was also thinking of like maybe an iPad or something like that that might actually have some other uses besides just that. But I can look into that.
Okay.
So that's
There's new iPhones are coming up for $600 that I'm looking at.
nice. Okay.
Going on
Um,
now.
all right. So I'm just going to keep moving. I did make a note of that though. IT expenses were fine. We're kind of right in budget every year. Holiday fund we keep at $10,000, even though, we have this
You
as a
may mention what that is, Michael.
yes, the holiday fund is our charity that we run every December for the waste management personnel. And we have kept it at $10,000, and we have set a record every single year and how much money we've come in. It just goes up and up and up. This year we raised over $11,000, I think $11,700 for the six personnel on the waste management crews that service the village. And the only reason why this hasn't been expended yet is because someone waited until February to cash their check, but this has all gone out.
Hey, Michael,
And
I was curious why the holiday fund in general over the years, I haven't really raised this, would be part of the budget since it's kind of a separate, independent from our expenses line item because it's not for our use, it's just for, for these folks. So I mean that's it's just kind of an aside. It's nothing urgent, but I just didn't really, for me, logically speaking, it's like a fundraiser basically for our
mhm.
contractors. So just wanted
The only
to
thing is that passes through our bank accounts, so the
ah,
accountants and
so
the
it has
auditors see it. So when
got
they
it.
see something come in, they need to know where it goes. So that's how much money came
That's
in, 11,700. And yeah, so
simple question, simple answer.
that's
Perfect.
the only reason. Yeah.
Thank you.
Elizabeth?
Yeah. Yeah, I wanted to say it's also goodwill. So if it's that sense, it is part of your business, right? I mean,
Absolutely. Yep.
I think it's perfectly justified being on it's an investment in your employees, let's say, look at it that way, even though they're contractor employees. But
I like
goodwill.
I like that even better than Michael's explanation.
Yeah, I actually think it works too. The waste management personnel come into the office to talk to me. That's super helpful. It's still the number one complaint we get is that someone's trash was missed or that a can was knocked over or something like that. So having a direct, communication line of communication with those guys is super helpful. So I think it works. And also, I'll note here that the waste management contract, we're going to get to that in a minute is is up for renewal. We have extended them to the last renewable year. Their contract ends on June 30th of 2026. So I will be posting an RFP for our waste management contract in April. That has to be posted by state law for 30 days. And then in May, we will be selecting who our next company is, whether it's waste management or a new company. Um, Getting bids for that huge portion of our services that we provide is going to be like a full-time job for me for 2 months. So that's coming, and I want everyone. I'm just going to be repeating it over and over again. So you're all going to hear me talk about it for for the next 6 months. And I see Jean making faces, so I know she knows how hard this job is going to be. Moving on. Salaries, I just bumped it up again for assuming like a 5% increase. That may or may not happen, but I just rounded it up um, as I do every year. The This rounded up as well. It's just 10% is what we assume for taxes and benefits. And then we last year we decided to just leave the police salaries on here because why not? And then that kind of bit us because I started getting audit requests, or not audit requests, FOIA requests, where people were asking information about our policing program because they were doing research projects for their school, or they're doing research project for their criminal justice program, or they were, you know, had complaints about county police officers and taking these off-duty jobs. And so they started like pestering me for data. And I had to just keep telling them, no, no, we don't have a program. So it would actually be much easier for me to just take it out. If the council
Good.
ever wants to create some program like this again, they can put it back in. So I'm just noting that we're deleting those line items that don't don't serve anything. Accounting and auditing is fine. I know Gene wants me to bump this budget up and have more auditing or more accounting help We do have a great accountant that I like working with. Um, and I'll let Jean make her point to the council when she's ready. Marty.
Yes, Michael, in terms of saving your sanity and your time, can our accountant actually do more of the prep work for the annual audits? Can you hand off some of that to the accountant? And can the accountant also make it easier for the monthly treasurer's reports for the council meeting? I mean, are those two tasks that you can hand off? Because I'd be happy to see you pay more than an accountant to do that so that you can focus. You've got a lot on your plate this year. And I
Mhm.
think that an accountant doing those stuff is really quite smart. So, question to you is, can we in fact hand off more of that to the accountant? Be happy to see this line item increase to save you that time.
Yeah, I do actually hand off a decent amount. The preparing the annual report, the monthly reports, the accountant actually, closes the books and makes sure that every line item, every expense that we have, every check that we wrote is um, put in the correct category within QuickBooks. And I have made improvements to this program, our accounting services, where I transferred our QuickBooks account to an online version so that we have multiple logins. So the accountant and I can both be logging in, watching those things. So sometimes the accountant will pull the reports that I send to Jeff and Arthur every month, and sometimes I can do it. So it's actually nice to have double coverage. And then for the audit, I kind of want to push back actually. I think the village manager, whether it's me or someone else, should d be solely responsible for the audit. We have an auditor, we have an incredible auditor. I hope
Yeah,
she she
Eva's
she never
great, no
leaves.
question. I'm just looking to
But
save your time.
I understand, but the like being able to hunt down and find all of the different documents that are needed is getting my hands in the dirt, you know? I never want to be a manager that doesn't know what's happening in my organization. So um, I think the audit's a super important part of this job. Jeff and then Gene.
Thanks so much, Michael. And again, just appreciating you're under the line of rapid fire here. So remember, you've got a team, council members and others. So,
Mhm.
we're happy to field questions, but we appreciate you. I do want to just bring up because I know while it's not this budget, right, for the next fiscal year, we are within the current fiscal year. And it'll come up, but it's important. We do see line items for consultants, and we actually see a line item, for example, management consultant, where we're at about 4,700, but we budgeted 50,000. I'm only putting that out there because not to confuse, because we are about to go through the process of the Brookville sidewalk, right? But that's already been accounted for. But I think Marty, and you always, are very thoughtful in appreciating and mentioning, not wanting our staff to be overwhelmed or, always looking out for their back. And so maybe Michael, just giving you an opportunity perhaps of talking about this line item, maybe for this year about what we're about to face, but also for next year, how this gives you that flexibility to bring folks on rather rapidly if you do feel that you're being stretched and you need that type of project management support. Over.
Yes, thank you, Jeff, for making that transition there. The I have several ideas, and I know Jeff has at least one idea of potential consultants that we could hire for special management projects to take a load off or assign a project to somebody. So I'm currently thinking about that, and that actually the money we spent there, this is the survey. I hired outside people to come in and manage the survey. That's how much they charge us. It's right there. Um, and I just threw it in this kind of bucket that can catch those types of projects. So if there's something else like that I can just hand off to somebody and they're going to do it, I absolutely will. And we have a budget line item. I was super happy when the council included this kind of general category for me to hire help when I can find a project that I need help with. Um, and actually, going back up one here for the GIS update, we don't need to do an update for the GIS mapping program every single year, but we keep the $5,000 budget in there. The $460 here is just for the licensing fee of that ArcGIS software. And so that means on the off years, we have like $5,000 just sitting here. What I'm hoping to do is actually hire someone to come in and train me on how to use the system so that I can make those updates in real time, maybe with a village iPad. So there's a project that I would love to learn how to do and use and have help. And I could totally hire, a college kid to come in and show me how to use this really complicated software. So there's just one idea off the top. And coming back up, but I want to go to Jean first.
Thanks, Michael. Who is the accountant? I didn't realize we had an accountant.
Her
What's
first
the name
name
of the accountant?
Her first name is Nicole. She's great.
Was the company?
WCS. I forget what that stands for off the top of my
Oh,
head.
yeah.
I had no idea we had an accountant.
We have an
Nicole
accountant.
who?
Gene, remember we had Dan Baden for years?
Yes, of course I remember Dan Baden. He was
And
indispensable. I
well,
remember.
he
I'm asking
dispensed a
who you're
little
doing
too.
it now.
There were more and more errors creeping in, transactions in the wrong categories, and also when we switched, we cut the expense down by like $40,000 a year.
Well, I'm surprised to hear we have an accountant, and I'd like to know why we don't see every month the accountant's report, much like the accountant's report we used to see every month from Dan Baden. But now that I know, at least we know her first name, I'm forever grateful for that. And you mentioned something, Michael, about you wanted to do the audit. Now I know LSWTG has been doing it for years. Could
They,
you?
they do. They're the ones who are doing it.
I
That's
know
correct.
who they are, Arthur.
Yeah,
I'm
I'm just saying
asking
that
Michael,
they're
who are you?
continuing to do it.
I want to make sure I understood what Michael said. I thought you said, Michael, that you wanted to do the audit.
Yeah.
No, let me clarify. Let me
Okay, thank
clarify.
you. That's what I would like you to
No,
do.
no, I love our auditor. Eva Webb is our
Yes,
auditor. She's incredible.
she's superb.
Um,
Yes.
what I was saying is from the village office's side, Eva sends me a website where I just have to upload all these files. Here's all the
Right.
receipts. They all go here. Here's all
Right.
the
Sure.
whatever. And there's hundreds of documents that are required. I actually really enjoy and think it's important to go through the process of following the audit and watching the audit and uploading all of those documents. I don't think that's something I would want to contract out to someone else to do.
But
Because that
why does the accountant not do that? Isn't that
the,
what the accountant's job is?
The accountant does some of those things. Actually, we share the workload. So it is a workload. It is a project every
Oh,
fall that the
yes.
manager needs to do. But yeah, I was just pushing back a little bit, and not all the way, saying I shouldn't, I should be doing it solely by myself. But I do think like having a close relationship with where the money is and what's happening with different things, because I catch things all the time that the auditor wouldn't know to catch. About which receipt is supposed to be recorded in what thing and that type of thing. And if you even just go through this line item of year-to-date spending, you'll see that there's like mistakes where I'm like, wait, I mentioned it on the holiday fund, I think. And I promise I'm going to move on wherever the holiday fund went.
It's okay.
Why hasn't all of the holiday fund been expended? We made $11,000, 700. Why hasn't only $8,000 been spent? That's something I caught because I'm in here at least once a month. Jeff.
Thanks. I'll make this quick, and this may not be the place for it, but I'll defer to you, Michael, if you want to mention it now, or it could be at a future meeting, monthly meeting. But June brings up a good point in terms of the monthly preparation and the reports that you provide to Arthur and myself in terms of the P&L and also the balance sheet, and that's what goes into our monthly treasurer report. Now, these are first of all, they're not required, right? And but we do go through a diligence there, and there are some validity and QC checks. But I do think, and Gene, you pushed us on this a number, at least since what I came on as treasurer, we started to add some of the things that you had been asking for, which are or others as well have been asking for, sort of more details. So we did start including the monthly balance sheet. So that is there every month, and then a few other more details. But we're always open to follow up on what other additional information we could provide on a monthly basis, because we have a lot, but again, it's not required. So we've been doing it. In fact, we did reach out, if Arthur and Michael recall, a couple of years ago, we reached out, we consulted with our accountants and talked about what we should include in the monthly report. And it essentially, most had um, shared with us we were going well beyond what others are doing. And I'm not saying that is still the benchmark that we want. We may want to provide even more, because I know, Gene, you've shared some of the things that historically we used to do here in terms of the details. But I just wanted to say that there is behind the scenes quite a bit of work that goes on to produce that monthly treasurer's report. And there are other things that we could probably include. It's just we take a snapshot. We don't give a full detail of everything that we receive on that monthly basis. Let me turn that over if Michael or Arthur have any other points on
Yeah.
that. Oh,
Yep.
Yeah, let's keep it moving. And Gene, I appreciate your comment here, and Marty
Mm.
as well. You're both appreciate, I appreciate that you all are trying to look out for me. So I really do appreciate that. Moving on, permitting and code enforcement. I just wanted to mention that we have over budgeted in this category year after year. We do not spend this much on our building permit administrator or our code enforcement officer or operations manager. He gets called both titles. Wayne gets called both titles sometimes. They're both in under this category, and we don't spend anywhere near this. And I have started pricing out what it would cost to hire someone to come in and, write like a land use attorney or a engineer to come in and write a stormwater management plan for us. And we could totally fit that budget line item into this category. So I just want to make everyone on the stormwater task force aware that we have enough money for whatever your recommendation is going to be related to the code. Marty?
Yeah, that was my question exactly, Michael. You're reading my mind. How much it would cost to have somebody come in and actually do a formal, whether it's an attorney or a building code specialist, to actually review our entire building code, and somebody who'd be knowledgeable or be able to research what other jurisdictions have done, like Somerset's water
Hmm.
management provisions, or building code provisions. Because,
Hmm.
I mean, Jeff Waldstreicher said at the La Firme event on Sunday that he did not think the state housing travesty bill would go through, or at least not in its current form, but it may go through in some form. And so I think it would be really um, good management this year to line up or interview or however you want to proceed somebody who can really give us that higher level of expertise on building codes and would be up to speed on perhaps responsible ways to um, protect VMA should some
Hmm.
version of the state housing bill go through. So, do you have like candidates in mind? Have we done some research on that? I say we. Have you done some research on that? On who
So
would
yeah, Somerset has already done it as far as implementing a stormwater code on top of the county's stormwater code, and so we would probably be able to borrow from that pretty simply. Ron anticipated under $10,000 for that piece of it, but it would really depend on the scope of work. As far, I mean, if you're doing a holistic review, are you holding, listening sessions with the residents? Is it going to be a 3-year process? And in that case, maybe not, but if it's just taking and copying what we like from the Somerset stormwater thing and implementing it on our case, I think we would be able to do that well within this mean. And sorry.
And I think your idea about working with the jurisdictions, because I imagine town of Chevy Chase and Chevy Chase Village and everybody is going to be looking at their building codes to try to respond or prevent maybe the worst impacts of the state housing legislation, whatever form it may eventually take. So is that something that we could do, like we did a joint contract with the attorney, I'm blanking on her name, about the county council housing bill? Can you
Michelle
do?
Rosenfeld.
Yeah, that's her name, Michelle. She was terrific, by the way. very good find there. Is that the kind of thing that we could do jointly with our neighbors to sort of look at building codes in all the villages that are affected potentially by this?
Yeah, and I actually think Ron's, for this go around with the state, Ron's been well positioned to take the lead on that. And um, the next line item here that transitions us to the legal stuff. We have cut back on Ron's time as I've gotten trained up. We have figured ways to, let him go early from some of our meetings, and the more I can do, the less he needs to do. So we're well under budget for that category as well, and that's with all of the housing stuff. He has been lobbying on our behalf. Um, I don't know if you would like the term lobbying, but he has been very active meeting with Secretary Day of Housing and Community Development at the state level. And
Yeah, I think he's doing a really good job, and Michelle, of course, did a good job too.
and when we hired Michelle, we threw her, receipts into this category as well. So that's been fine. We haven't gone over in this budget category. So I think we're okay on that front as well. I'm gonna keep it moving here. Traffic engineering, we're saying the same. We haven't spent any money there yet this year. The GIS update I mentioned a minute ago, I am looking to spend that money before the end of this fiscal year, and we'll keep the budget line item the same for next year. Management consultants I have highlighted because I wanted to talk about it. Jeff kind of stole the thunder here and talked about it, so I think we're good. We are looking at potentially hiring interns and potentially hiring additional volunteers. Yes, Jeff, if you want to jump in.
Very, very, sorry, very, very quickly. Again, th this is just something we know you're on top of, but I've seen this with other municipalities and even other places where you kind of keep a short list of perhaps potential program project managers, consultants, things like that, that you can reach out on notice, right? Because it's one thing to have it, it's one thing to have the funds that are nimble, but if it takes 4 months to procure something that is in your face, it doesn't really help. So just over, but know that you're on top of it, and we could probably add to that short list.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm always looking for people. So if you hear of people that are interested in anything related to local government, let me know. I've found the consultant or contractor for the election committee the last, I guess it was 2 years ago. That was my friend Julian, and then this year I found Logan through the network of city managers as well. So that's proven successful so far. But yeah, we're always looking for the next person. Pepco, we can say the same. We're actually well under, since we switched to LED, we're under, I think we lowered this budget and we still go under it. So we're doing well there. Street cleaning, I am suggesting we bump it up by $6,000. This is mostly because of the county's requirement to switch to electric blowers and not gas blowers. It's taking significantly more man hours to clean our streets. Um, we are doing it as efficiently as possible. We had a ton of complaints about leaves in the street in the fall, and we went over this year. So we will need to do a budget adjustment for this fiscal year, and I'm suggesting we bump it up for next year. I don't think there will be any issues or complaints with that. Um, Street maintenance is staying the same. Again, I here's an error. I think I did spend some money on to fix the sidewalk here, and that probably should have gone in this category. So now I'm gonna go talk to my accountant and find where that money went. But we can keep that at $10,000. Not anticipating any major street repairs this year. And then snow removal. I've actually, because it's the same contractor and the invoicing works the way it does, I've actually just decided to combine these categories between the sidewalk snow shoveling and the snow removal or plowing line items. That should just be one line item. So I've taken the 35 and the 15 and combined it and rounded it up to $50,000 for all snow removal services. This year has been especially bad for snow removal. We've had significant amounts of snow and ice, which is really hard to move. And I think Rolling Anchors, our crew here, has done a fantastic job. And we have gone over this $45,000 combined budget now. With the last snow flurries that we got the other day, that pushed us over. So we will have to do a budget adjustment here once all that expenses come in. Again, this doesn't include this line item here does not include the snowstorms in February. So Um, you'll see why that's not there. Yes, Marty.
And in some years, of course, we spend almost nothing on snow plowing or sidewalk clearance, right? So,
Right.
so
So
this is
we're kind of
really
budgeting for worst case scenario, and this year was probably the worst case scenario. I mean, of course, there's always a worst case scenario, but um, yeah, a lot of years this money just sits here, and that's fine. And then if we, if that's the case, then we can always do a budget adjustment and transfer it into another account if needed. So.
that was my question. Thank you.
Mhm. Here's the waste management conversation that I think the council needs to be aware of over and over again. I don't know how much this is going to cost next year because I don't have a contract for next. As of July, we do not have recycling pickup. We do not have trash pickup. We do not have bulk trash. We do not have yard waste collection as of July 1st. So that is going to be a big priority for me for the next 6 months.
Michael, you might mention when we're looking for some competition here, most folks don't like to come around to the side of the house to pick up the waste.
Correct.
They want it at the curb. So having that requirement does limit the number of companies who will actually respond to an RFP.
That's correct. And maybe we'll get a couple bids where they just bid crazy high because they assume that's going to be really difficult. So it'll probably require a very good, well-written RFP, and also probably will require me having lots of conversations with these companies, trying to explain to them what exactly the case is here. We're not asking you to, go into people's garages, but we are asking you to go into their side yards and maybe open a gate and get to know the neighborhood. And yeah, it is a unique neighborhood and requirement for us that a lot of other neighborhoods don't require. But of course, it is why we're better than being in unincorporated Montgomery County because we have incredible services that go above and beyond. Composting can stay the same, leaf bags, recycling bins. I have cut costs and found savings in all of these programs in previous years, so I think we can just stay the same. Tree maintenance, I'm saying we can stay the same this year. We're like right on pace for that $40,000 this year. I also need to post the tree uh, arborist RFP as well. I'll be doing that at the same time as the trash, just to combine those together, posting them on the state website. Yes, Marty.
I had a question about the tree maintenance and the arborist. That came up at a council meeting a couple months ago about having the RFP for the arborist have the arborist actually do like a twice a year or whatever village-wide survey of trees to try to consolidate the work. I think that it's pretty expensive to have Mulherron come out individually. I mean, obviously you need case by case responses, but
Hmm.
if we could actually have, a twice a year arborist assessment and then have the work planned so it was more efficient, um, that might save some money there. So I'm wondering if you can put that into the RFP.
Yeah, that's probably not a budget conversation. I'm going to leave this at $40,000, pending whatever that those bids that we get are. And I am going to look at again at that RFP before I post it to make sure that we're capturing all the stuff that we need. We need a annual pruning that normally happens in the winter, and then but we do need still the emergency services that Mulherron is so good at providing, and we still need the one-off. When there's an issue there. I bet I went and looked at a tree on Taylor Street today that needs some pruning, and I looked at a tree on Shepherd today that needs pruning. So those one-offs do need to still be in there. But yeah, I agree that there should be at least a winter pruning in there. And actually, where I think I'm going to be able to find savings next year and with the next arborist contract is the tree planting program. I have heard from some of my colleagues in other towns that they have quite a few much cheaper options for native trees to plant, and they'll come and plant them. If you work directly with the nurseries, you don't need to go through the middleman with the subcontractor of Mulherron. You can just go straight to the nurseries and have them grow you the exact tree that you want next year, and that it's significantly cheaper. These prices have really gone up. And we're spending a lot of money to plant these trees in the right of way, as well as when a tree comes down, we replace it, but also on people's private property.
That's a great idea, Michael. Thank you.
Yeah, and I love trees, so I I don't know that everyone knows this, but I managed an orchard. I grew up working for my dad's lawn business Father and Son's Lawn Service is what it was called, and I grew up mowing lawns. And I left my dad's business when I was 15 because I got full-time work working in apple orchards in Washington State. So I have a lot of experience with trees, and I love trees.
Hmm.
Um, and the right-of-way landscaping can stay the same. I found some savings there, and I've also improved the services that they provide. They are no longer, they always plant these little flowers that last like 1 week and they get trampled. They plant them all over in front of the welcome signs and in front of the office. And I have gotten them to replace that with native plants that come back every year. So that is an improvement. And instead of using the really cheap little mulch that gets washed away and blown all over the place, they're going to be using a natural like wood bark material. Um, so that's going to look good and it's going to last longer and get cheaper over time. Community events can stay the same. Elections, Marty, I know you're on the call. I just want to say I am bumping it up this year. Um, when we hire a consultant and when we have to, the $10,000 is really just that's maxed out just with the mail service contractor, election contractor, whatever we call them. And then, postage is something on top of that. Anything else beyond that is on top of that. So that's why I bumped it up a little bit this year, just assuming that we're going to go over again this year.
I think that's accurate, and thank you for doing it. And I also think that it has been an enormous time saving for the election committee to have Logan as our contractor this year, very reasonable rate to do the voter roll verification heavy lifting, which is, just dozens and dozens of hours of calls and emails to confirm the 190 some, names that didn't match this year. And he's done a superb job, and I think that we should plan on that because it really, really relieved the election committee of an enormous time burden and worked really well. So thank you for that this year, and the committee really, really appreciates having help with that because that is such a time-consuming, difficult piece of our work.
Absolutely. Okay, and then now the fun part. I know this meeting's running long, but last two things I just want to mention here, and then open it up for any last comments from you all, is that we have some potential new programs that I'm asking the council to consider in this year's budget. One is this request from Montgomery Municipal Cable of transferring those franchise fees that we get directly to them. We have a letter that the council will be considering. Um, from them. And then the stormwater and education programs that I mentioned earlier that came directly from Yasmina. Those are there in the budget as a potential new program that the council will be discussing. Yes, we have a new resident with a hand up. Go ahead.
Snazzy.
Hi, this is Yasmina actually.
Oh, hi.
And thank you so much for adding that to the program. The idea behind this, and we'll be sharing the recommendations from our consultant on Monday with the community, but the consultant has recommended doing some work with greenscaping properties and trying to mitigate stormwater that way. So the idea is to really look at how we can improve the county rainscaping program by augmenting it and maybe providing some incentives to residents. So that's a big part of this amount that has been budgeted here.
Okay. If I
Yes,
bump
thank you.
into you on the street, can I call you Snazzy?
You can call me anything you'd like, Alta.
Okay.
Jeff.
Yeah, just a quick comment on that. I appreciate we all appreciate how much the Stormwater Task Force has, in terms of both their outreach, their reporting, and their recommendations, and just putting out there, again, there may need to be a little bit more details, but I remember looking into some of those greenscape programs through the county on our, for our own personal property. And I remember this coming up. Arthur, you may have even mentioned it at a council meeting, over the past year, but just the idea that that would be perhaps a really great collaboration, right? We figured it out, and it sounds like I think Yasmina, you might even shared with me, or Michael did. I'm losing track, but there are other sections and municipalities near us that have actually sponsored this program, and it kind of seems like a no-brainer, and the uptake of it might be slow at first. But all you need are a couple to kind of work out the kinks, but it could be a really wonderful thing, collaboration with our residents, our county, and working with our municipality. So
Yeah.
over on that point,
Okay.
I did have one question, Michael, just in terms of run of the show.
Yeah.
There were just a couple things I wanted to say, but I wanted to do it maybe perhaps after you wrapped up and other
Okay.
residents had some points. So I
Yeah,
didn't
yeah,
want to
that makes
interrupt
sense.
you.
I'll kick it back to you when I just wrap up. We're almost done here, I think. Yasmina, did you have a final point, or was that a previous hand?
Yeah, I put my hand down actually, but just very quickly, thank you so much, Jeff. Yes, other municipalities are doing this as well and really looking very closely at how they can help their residents mitigate stormwater. So we'll talk more about it when we meet with Bayland on Monday. And of course, I'm absolutely available if you have any questions, and Elizabeth too.
That's great. Thank you, Yasmina, for all the good data behind this, and we're looking forward to the Monday presentation of the stormwater report, and then whatever comes to the council. It looks like in April. Okay, so that concludes what I've heard that it is coming. There's always room for another line in an Excel spreadsheet, though. So if there are other
You
programs
could
that you
put in
need.
like 2 million lines, but we won't go
I've
there.
never found a limit, but if you all have additional programs, that means there's room here. I can create another line, and we can throw a new program in here, and that results currently in just over $1,083,000 and $22 budget that I'm kind of anticipating for this year currently. Uh,
Yeah.
Marty?
Well,
Yes, thanks. I just want to circle back to the idea of some kind of solar panel subsidy or encouragement program, probably
Mhm.
parallel to the stormwater mitigation stuff, where we would give homeowners incentives to go solar, because it is cheaper, I understand from what little I've looked into it, to do solar panels collectively, right? Like 10
Mhm.
households or 20 households
Mhm.
can do it more inexpensively than each of them doing it individually. So that's just a
Yeah, and I
suggestion.
do have it written down here on my pad, the conversations we had earlier in this meeting about easements for cut throughs, the cell phone, stormwater programming, solar, and I think that was all that was mentioned, I believe. So that is on my list. I was hoping, we had a gentleman, David Salter, come and present to the council in the fall with this idea and program, and it hasn't really gone anywhere. I haven't heard anything since it, and I've talked to David a couple times, and I haven't heard him even mention it again. So I'm really not sure what has happened with that. There hasn't been a whole lot of momentum. Policy ideas are, I'm sure you all know this, but they never go away. They bubble up and then they go back down, bubble up and go back down, bubble up and go back down. And I'm just kind of up here waiting to see what bubbles up from the community. It's from you all that I get these ideas.
the
So that's
one
that's how I
area
treat it.
one area that the water report is going to be looking at, will be mentioning, is improving the stormwater sewers. And they are very expensive. It has not been a municipal function in the past, but it's something that we may have to take on or take a more serious look at in the future.
Absolutely. And the last thing I'll just mention here before turning it back to Jeff is we do have $1.5 million set aside for capital projects. I'm recommending that again, staying the same. We're expecting to spend about $500,000 on this sidewalk project over the next 2 months. And then I'm suggesting we refill it, and potentially we could just rename this. That the council can do that even halfway through the year. So if we wanted to take it from walkability and put it towards stormwater, or if we want to combine all three of these and say this year they're all for stormwater, that's totally fine. So that's $1.5 million that we have in this next year's budget for capital projects. So I think
That last item there, the auditor's recommended reserve is a rainy day fund. That
correct.
the
Yes.
auditors say, put some money away. If you lose all your income, you'll have something to draw on. You don't have to close up shop.
And that's basically a year's worth of spending right
Right.
there at current levels. So, Marty, and then I'm going to give it to you, Jeff, to sign us off.
Thank you so much. This has been incredibly helpful, and I really appreciate the open discussion. My last question is about total reserves. Since our balance sheet is at 7.6 million, our total reserves are more than 2.5. Can you explain that difference?
Uh, this is reserves that are set aside in capital projects or set aside in audited reserves. So that's the 2.5 million. So everything else is unaccounted for. It's just sitting in a bank account, not in a budget line item. So in my cover letter or my transmittal letter to the council, I will highlight that and mention and probably just use the most recent Jeff's report from the previous month that says, what the total amount is in the bank accounts. This is a budget. This isn't an audit of our current assets.
Yeah, but thank you for the big picture.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. It's important. It just this isn't quite the right spot for it. But yeah, absolutely, I'm working on that. That's my next step is create a draft transmittal letter as a kind of a cover page for this budget, and then the budget narrative AI is going to produce it for me.
Sounds good. Thank you for doing it.
Okay, Jeff, that does it for me. You want to take us off?
Sure, and I'll make it relatively short. Couple key points, but let me just start with the big thanks, right? We've got a great crowd, very informed, and this is what makes, our community special, that we are all in this together. I do want to share again, I can't say enough about Michael, and all the prep that you do behind the scenes, and appreciate a lot of it is considered almost thankless because, all that you do, but then for whatever it is that may not come up, that you seem to get those. But we know how hard you work. Everyone appreciates you. So thank you. And I do want to say this about Arthur. Before I took on the Treasury position a number of years ago, I can't say enough, and I'm not blowing smoke. I mean, really, having gone over to his home, walking through all the data that he's kept and really helping and supporting me. I just want to thank that because honestly, I wouldn't be able to be in this position without that. And then I just want to say a couple of substantive points. Marty, you really pushed me on this and us, and I think it's really important is understanding, what we've just gone through, right, is almost like a cash flow exercise of just what is that in the moment for that year snapshot. And really to understand the overall fiscal health is that balance sheet. So I know we mentioned a couple numbers, but the total current assets is a bit over 6 million. But putting that in perspective, again, the health of our community and municipality is exceptional. And we hear that at the budget meetings and more at the audits. And so we should feel very grateful and blessed for that because that is not the case everywhere. And so, putting that in perspective, that if there are ups and downs, and we anticipate coming up, there may be, we also recognize that ARPA, that extra sweetener we've had that actually helped us increase our total or net assets, that has gone. And I think Gene and others have mentioned very specifically some other pieces. Economic downturn is a flat line estimate, the right estimate for income. I think we could readdress that. The possibility of interest rates, though we already heard that may not be the impact for this particular fiscal year, it could be for others. And then I do want to say one thing, Michael, just for us to think about. I think we all recognize we've heard the cost of eggs as the proxy, but inflation is on everyone's mind. And when we look at the expenses between last year and this year, we are seeing what, if anyone were to do a benchmark of just what you're seeing locally, nationally, or anywhere, it doesn't really kind of compute with what we would consider the rate of inflation, right? It's just going up a little bit. So we may want to at least justify or talk a little bit why we would think that there's these flat lines versus where everyone else is seeing, perhaps increased costs due to inflation. I think it's worth it. And I think the other piece which I want to point out, so we said the glass half full, the fiscal health. I would say, and I turn it back to you, Michael, and it may not be here, but it may be for when we get into our next open meeting. Whenever I've served as treasurer in other places, not just here, but in other capacities. And so when I look at this, I look at what is the state of the fiscal health, but then what are the risks, right? And how can we account for those? So Arthur, you brought that up, and I think it's a really good thing is, one piece might be infrastructure, and there may be some significant things while we're doing the Brookville sidewalk. Are there things we know the pipes? We know there are things that could break, but just putting that in perspective, that's one risk that could be a significant capital project and other things. But I do want to address that is where our reserves come in. And so again, I think when I look at this in the position of treasurer with a fiduciary responsibility, I believe that while I look at this as a risk management exercise too, that we have accounted for that both in terms of potential large capital infrastructure projects that may spring upon us, but then the in the weeds, right? So Michael, if there's something that comes up and you feel that you and your staff are being stretched, not only have we built in the flexibility for you to tap into this fund, but again, in a way that is rapid because you could reach out and give yourself support. So I'm going to pause there. Again, thank you so much. And again, just those couple remarks of fiscal health overall is tremendous. But from a risk management standpoint, I think we've built in some really good guardrails and other pieces of this that we should all be able to sleep very well at night. So with that said, I'll turn it over and thank you so much.
Thank you for
Elizabeth wants to sleep well too.
Yeah, thank you, Jeff. That was really great summary there and lots to follow up on. So I really appreciate tag teaming this with you all year long. Has been a pleasure. And Elizabeth, do you have
Yeah,
a
I
final
just wanted
comment?
to follow up on Jeff's point about considering risks, which I think is very, very important and very strategic. And what we're going to present on the 9th is absolutely a risk, which is the risk of flooding. So I just wanted to say that, and then it comes with a infrastructure budget attached. So, but that kind of thinking I think is very important and that's very real. You know, it's going to happen. It's just a question of when. So
Mm,
then there are things we can do to protect ourselves.
yeah,
That's
thank
all. It was a
thank
very
you.
interesting meeting.
Good.
Michael, thank you for your preparation. It was very interesting,
Oh yeah, absolutely. And thank you
informative.
and thank you and Yasmina for serving on the water task force. I think
Oh,
that's
sure,
super
sure, sure.
important and that's going to be relevant for years to
Yes,
come for the
it
village. So,
continues. Okay.
yep. Okay.
Okay.
With that, I want to thank you all for coming. This has been the best budget working session we've ever had. And without any other further
Yeah.
ado,
Good.
have a
Good
good
night,
night.
everybody.
I'll
Thank
see
you
you all
for
soon.
being here.
Thanks all.